see you all here. Hope you're doing well. Ooh, this fraud is bad. Y'all, this thing is bad. I didn't realize how deep this thing went. Tim Walz, the governor, they said he knew all about this and he made people be quiet about it. Ilhan Omar knew all about it and she tried to be quiet about the whole thing. And they're now digging up her fraud. She married her own brother to get him in here and try to speed up the citizenship for him. So yeah, that's fraud. You married your own brother. You know how disgusting that is. So calling herself trying to get him in here and get citizenship for him and all that stuff, but she's nothing but a fraud herself. This woman, when she took office, they said her income was zero. And in a very short period of time, now she's worth $30 million. You know, so she ain't nothing but a fraudster herself. So now a lot is coming out about the fraud, the kind of fraud they were committing, between mothers committing all this fraud and using their kids as part of the fraud. I mean, these people, as far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump can't get them out of here fast enough. That's the way I see it. So, y'all, I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. Shalom to everybody in the chat. But yeah, this thing, it is deep. And these Somalians, that's all they did the whole time is commit all kinds of crimes. Now they're screaming and crying because a lot of folks are telling them to go home. Everybody online, when they're in chats with them or on live stream, they're spending the whole time telling them, y'all get out of here, go home, get out of this country and leave. And they spent their whole time talking about some Somalia is better than this place. Since when? Since when? I said, this is all you Africans do is lie. That's why you were trying to steal our reparations and talk about we should come over there and help y'all build Africa. You know why? Because y'all don't know how to build. You don't know how to build. That's why many of those countries look the same as they did since centuries ago. Y'all still got dirt roads. You don't have no outdoor lights. Y'all still don't have any buildings that look modern. You don't have nothing, you know. So you need a whole different group to come up in there with a billion people on the continent to help you build the country. I mean, y'all, yeah, but you claim to be smarter than everybody. You're no different than these people here, you know. And they didn't build nothing either. If it wasn't for us, America would not be where it is today. You know, I mean, none of you Gentiles are a damn bit of good. None of you are. All right, y'all. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Thank you.
It also, so she comes into the country and is stirring up fraud. This lady marries her biological brother so that he can get citizenship in this country. But that, not only that, once President Trump made his statements, I want you to listen to what she feels Somalians are to this country. Check this out.
Somali Muslim Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is now under fire after she claimed that Somalis are the foundation of America and the reason why it's thriving.
Somalis are not terrorizing this nation. We are helping it thrive. Somalis have always seen themselves as a fabric of this nation. So not only are we not going anywhere, we are not going to allow anybody to make us feel less Minnesotan or less American.
Somali Muslim Ilhan Omar is now under fire after she claimed that Somalis are the foundation of America and the reason why it's thriving. She also claimed that Somalis aren't going anywhere. These statements from the Muslim Congresswoman has garnered controversy online. Commenters claimed that the founding fathers weren't Somali and that Ilhan Omar shouldn't be a congresswoman. But what do you think about Ilhan Omar's statements? Do you think Somalis are the foundation of America? Let me know your thoughts down below.
And see, this lady is a radical. And when she steps up on stage, she talks like that. Hey, it doesn't make us any less American and blah, blah, blah. We're the fabric. Now, let's check real quick into what's going on out there in Minnesota. And then I'm going to let you hear this other video clip of Ilhan Omar that will blow your mind because it gets much worse. So Somali autism fraud in Minnesota may have gone over $1 billion and is linked to the Somali $250 million Feed Our Future food aid fraud. Autism claims to Medicaid in Minnesota shot up from $3 million in 2018 to $400 million in 2023 and 2024 for a total of $1.4 billion. And here's the chart. And look at what happened when COVID hit. In Minnesota, they just went crazy. They lost it. Now, check out these numbers by Benny Johnson, a conservative media person. You may be familiar with Benny, like Benny. Minnesota Somali community has been caught funneling taxpayer dollars to terrorist group Al-Shabaab overseas by falsely diagnosing children with autism through Medicaid. Look at the insane spike in claims, $3 million to $400 million. You mean to tell me autism in Minnesota kicked off that much? Where you're looking at literally like 120 times over? No. Within the same time period, autism centers skyrocketed from 41 to 328, with many of them being in Somali communities. Your tax dollars are being stolen and shipped over to people who hate us and want us unalive. You should be furious. This is a direct result of careless immigration policies. Facts. Facts. Now, listen to this. This is going to blow your mind. And you tell me, do you feel she should be deported or she should be booted out of Congress after this statement? Check this out.
No, in jidadkeeni aan wada dhisano. Anigu waan ahay gabar Mareykanka laga doortay oo Congresska Mareykanka ku jirto. Laakiin waxaan ahay gabar Soomaaliyeed, gabar idinku jinsi ah, gabar idinku af ah, gabar idinku diin ah, oo hadde qof iyadoo da'yar waddankeedii laga kaxeeyay wili xiise u qabto in maalin waddankeedii ay ku noolaato oo dadkeedii wax ay la wadaagto. Marka alxamdulillah waxaan rajaynayaa aniga iyo ilmahayga in aan hadde ku barbaariyo iyagana ilmahooda ay ku barbaariyaan dhulkii aniga aan ku soo koray. Taasna haddii ay suurtagelayso waa hadde shaqo badan inaan wada qabanaa hadduu Ilaahay yiraahdo oo aan ka dhignaa dhulkeena dhul barwaaqadiisa dadka oo dhan ay dareemi karaan oo ay arki karaan oo ay ka wada faa'iideysan karaan.
Minnesota, get rid of Tim Walz. There's so much scandal and fraud going on in that state. Let me break it down for you. There's a nonprofit called Feeding Our Future. Basically, they're supposed to be delivering meals to children. However, prosecutors are stating that this nonprofit are billing for these services. However, children are never receiving those meals. 50 people have been charged, mostly have pled guilty, and mostly come from a Somali background. Now, let's dig deep into the fraud. There's supposed to be fraud between Medicaid and housing programs. Again, these Medicaid and housing programs are billing for these services. However, people are actuality are never receiving these services as well. Here comes more fraud. Recently, there has been accusations tied to autism services and therapy. Somali migrant families allegedly are submitting fake diagnosis and therapy claims. It doesn't stop. With these project claims and money, it's not just being spent in Minnesota. It's been connected to international funding, to a militant group called Al-Shabaab. This is why I said Minnesota need to get rid of Tim Walz. My name is Tiffany. I lost 150 pounds in 2.5 years, and I also report different news topics. Tap in.
Over 480 Minnesota DHS employees, they say they warned Walz early about the fraud, the Somali fraud happening. And instead of fixing it, he retaliated. The group wrote on X, quote, Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud. But no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz, certain DFL members, and an indifferent mainstream media. Well, the group also claims they wrote to Kamala Harris and the DNC several times, warning about Tim Walz's incompetence, fraud, scandals, and retaliation efforts. But surprise, surprise, they heard nothing back. Even the New York Times now can't ignore this. They reported that one homelessness program ballooned from 2.6 million in 2021 to 104 million in 2024. That's not inflation. That's robbery with spreadsheets. And let's not forget, a majority of this fraud is coming from the Somalis in Minnesota. But Tim Walz argues they're essential to the Minnesota community.
As far as demonizing our Somali community, maybe he could help us on some things. Demonizing an entire community, folks who are in the professions, educators, artists, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, they bring the diversity and the energy to a place like Minnesota. And for him to just randomly decide to do this, it makes no sense. Do your job. Get the criminals out. Secure our border. But do it with dignity and respect to the American tradition of respecting immigrants and refugees as a beacon of hope.
Translation, they're the Democrat voting base, and he needs them now that he's seeking re-election for a third term. This will be an interesting campaign season to watch. And notice how this golden rule, don't judge an entire group by the actions of a few, comes with a very selective return policy. It applies to everyone except white Americans. I mean, that's the modern left's moral math, right? Collective innocence for some, collective guilt for others. Jasmine Crockett proving that point, our unofficial ambassador of thoughtful policy. She says it's white Americans who should be kicked out of the country, not illegals.
Let's talk about the white supremacists and how many of them need to be kicked out of this country, because I can guarantee you, I can track down more crimes that they've committed, because overall immigrants have a lower crime committal rate than white supremacists. But we don't want to talk about that in this country.
This coming from a woman who has gotten her Jeffrey Epstein's mixed up in the past. I mean, this is the problem with the left, right? Big dramatic accusations and zero evidence. And yet somehow they still deliver it with full confidence. When Republicans talk about illegal immigration and crime, we're not speaking in hashtags. We're talking about real names. Names like Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungaray, Kayla Hamilton, and now, unfortunately, 20-year-old U.S. Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom. She was shot in the head and chest on Thanksgiving Day, a life just beginning, violently taken, allegedly, by an Afghan national. Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf also shot and is now fighting for his life. But today, we did get a small piece of good news.
Andrew remains in serious condition. We did have some positive news that we were told that Andrew was asked if he could hear the nurse who asked the question to give a thumbs up, and he did respond. And we were told that he also wiggled his toes. So we take that as a positive sign.
Now, the suspected killer in the D.C. shooting is, again, an Afghan national who was let into the United States through a Biden-era humanitarian parole program during the disastrous 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal. A caseworker actually raised red flags about this man before he was granted asylum earlier this year. The Trump administration says they think he was likely radicalized in the U.S. by connections from his home country. Here's the president.
We got a lot of people in our country that shouldn't be here, and they came in through Biden. And he was the worst president in the history of our country. But the single biggest thing he did was allow millions of people into our country that shouldn't be here. Drug dealers, prisons were opened up and allowed to come into our country. That animal should not have been allowed to come into our country.
Now, in the wake of that tragic shooting, the Trump administration has halted all asylum decisions until it can assure everyone is getting properly vetted. The State Department has stopped issuing visas for Afghan passport holders, and they're reviewing green card holders from 19 countries of concern.
There is no way to clearly vet these people 100% that they're safe to come to this country, from these third world nations. President Trump's doing the right thing, reviewing every one of these people that came under the Biden administration and drilling down on them. I really, truly think that most of them are going to end up being deported because we're not going to be able to properly vet them.
In the case of the Afghan national accused of shooting the 2 National Guard members, U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro says charges will include first-degree murder, with more expected. As for Attorney General Pam Bondi, she says the Justice Department will seek the death penalty.
Somali's running an autism scam in Minnesota. You have these women signing Somali families up for their kids to be diagnosed with autism so they could get all kinds of benefits from these providers. So they'll go to these providers where the providers could charge the state for all kinds of money. In 2018, imagine this, in 2018, these services, the state paid $3 million in services for autism, right? By 2023, it went up to 400 million. Autism providers went from 20 to 400 providers, all because of this scam. And you know what? They took that money and they sent it back to Somalia to fund an Islamist terrorist group that's connected to Al-Qaeda.
Take a look at Minnesota's federally funded autism program. Now, several people, and this is an example, a woman in the Somali community, are co-conspirators, and they're accused of recruiting kids for autism therapy. They brought in families, had them convinced to get their kids diagnosed as autistic. In fact, these families ultimately ended up having various social services bid for their children, competing with the number of size of check that they would get. It didn't matter if the kids had autism. And what happened? Autism claims to Medicaid surged. In 2018, $3 million. By 2023, listen here, from $3 million to $400 million. Autism providers jumped from 41 to 328 in 5 years. Now, City Journal reports that the Somali fraud rings send a lot of money back to Somalia. 40% of households in Somalia get remittances from abroad. That totals $1.7 billion. That is more than the entire budget of the Somali government. Money being sent abroad, from abroad, back to Somalia. Where is that money going? Take a look at this. Most alarmingly, a lot of that money is funneled through money traders, and in the end, ends up in the hands of Al-Qaeda-linked Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab. So to bring this full circle, the Minnesota taxpayers are funneling money through fraudulent autism claims back to Somalia, where that money lands in the accounts of Al-Shabaab.
The fraud that's happening in Minnesota, like over billions of dollars, allegedly Tim Walz knew everything about it. Like over 400 whistleblowers from DHS, Minnesota DHS, reported to him like, hey, we're being scammed. We think something fraudulent is happening. And instead of Tim Walz being on board with them and investigating the fraud, he retaliated against them, systemically isolated those employees, and he lowered the safeguards on these programs where you could even take advantage of them even more for over 2 years. And this is how all this money accumulated, this scam, scamming taxpayers out of hundreds of millions of dollars up to billions plus, because he lowered all the safeguards, all the protections. Like, he welcomed fraud. Even one of the fraudsters that got caught up, the people who scammed, these programs, he honored them with like some type of refugee award. Now Tim Walz is under investigation. But yeah, over 400 employees, DHS employees, came to Tim Walz and pointed out the fraud, but he just let it go on for years. Another Somalian scam in Minnesota, but this couple got away with $7.2 million after going to court and being convicted. The judge overturned it. They had a home health care business for 2 years without a physical address, like without a building, but a P.O. box. They overcharged Medicaid, overbilled them, didn't have documentation for the services that they provided. All this was provided in the courtroom, and the judge said, nope, we're going to overturn the decision of the jury. So they got away with $7.2 million. Sarah West, the judge in Minnesota, Democratic judge in Minnesota. And then this is what the husband, I can't click out his first name right, but Youssef, last name. Yeah, crazy. So no accountability. You could go to Minnesota, scam,
millions of dollars and you could get away with it. This is easier than robbing a bank. This is easier than robbing a bank, just falsifying a couple of documents, and there you go. You can have millions of dollars in Minnesota.
Prison for one of the Feeding Our Future fraudsters convicted in the first trial for the pandemic meal fraud scam. Abdi Majid Noor and his co-defendants stole $47 million in their part of the $300 million scheme. They claim to serve 18 million meals at phony sites like the small Empire Cuisine and Market in Shakopee. Noor's job was creating the fake meal counts and invoices, plus the rosters filled with made-up names of kids. He used fraud money for a trip to the Maldives and to get a college degree, spending money on the website paymetodoyourhomework.com to finish it. On top of it all, Noor played a key role in trying to bribe a juror in hopes of getting a not guilty verdict in his trial. Lead prosecutor Joe Thompson said in court, this country offered the defendant everything, the opportunity for a life, the opportunity to live in peace, and he paid us back by playing us all for fools. I'm Lou Raguse. Follow for more.
It's like the only thing I'm going to take responsibility for is putting like 2 people in jail. After what, I don't know, is it like a decade, $1 billion, in which they ripped off the elderly, infants, the sick, the hungry. They should be. This guy shows up, hey, I arrested him. No, you're like the guy who shows up and eats the free pizza, but you didn't help any of us move the furniture. Hey guys, I'm here. What you're seeing is the ultimate opportunity cost of electing a vacuous virtue signaler with no skills at all. While he was pushing tampons and trans and men's rooms, the Somalis were ripping off the state like it was a 24-hour mini mart in Philadelphia. This is what happens when you elect a person who will say anything, but is incapable of doing anything. This party, his party, they are the ultimate in self-serving, self-seeking selfishness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They realize that there is a reward in saying yes to everything without having any responsibility to say no. So, and again, it goes back to what I said in the A block. If you were to call out on this fraud, you go, oh, you hate Somalians. Why are they all Somalians? You hate us. You hate us. No, we hate.
The 77th person is now charged in the $300 million Feeding Our Future meal fraud case. Usman Kamara runs a very popular grocery store in North Minneapolis on Broadway Avenue called Kay's Dollar Grocery and Deli, or Kay's African Market. That's where federal prosecutors say Kamara claims.
We're just picking on the Somalians, though. We're just picking on them.
Says that never happened, and he stole $1 million meant to feed hungry kids. The feds plan to seize the building where the store is located because they say Kamara used fraud money to buy it from his landlord. I'm Lou Raguse. Follow for more news.
So now that there's been 77 people charged in Minneapolis, Minnesota on fraud, they go from regular Africans, Somalians, Ethiopians, Eritreans, all of them. Y'all all played yourselves. And y'all talked about Black Americans while you did it, which is a shame because we could have taught you some things. We could have told you while y'all was pulling this stunt that the federal government is going to fuck you over. We could have told y'all. But I think y'all keep us out of your business on purpose because we're American. And we would tell you that that's fraud. That's not going to work. You can't do that. So I think that's why y'all want to keep y'all language and keep speaking amongst yourselves and exclude the Black American who could show you some things, okay? Because I don't know if you forgot or not, but this is our fucking country. Africans, all of you, all of them. Pick a country. I'm talking to all Africans. America is tired of y'all. Because y'all come over here, run amok, scam it up, and then they start looking at us all like, oh, Black people. No. Yeah, we all Black. They're the Africans, though. We're Americans. Natives here, not them. They're the ones coming over here doing this shit. Y'all should have listened to us a long time ago, Somalians. I'm telling y'all that right now. Omar Fateh lost. Trump just took the TPS status away from y'all. Ilhan Omar ass is next. I'm telling y'all, the government is done. Y'all should have listened. You should have listened to us, but instead, y'all made us your enemy. Black American, Black American. I forget the word y'all call us, a curly hair, Jareer. The Jareer. Yeah, who's the fucking Jareer now? On his way back to Sandland. Yeah. Listen, don't be mad at me. Be mad at the nigga negotiating your deals.
How did you and your brother get involved in this HSS scheme? Fraud was a family affair for the Adows, as the two brothers have now pleaded guilty here in federal court to defrauding Minnesota's housing stabilization program out of millions of dollars.
Assad Adow, owner of Leo Human Services, admitted in court that his company ripped off taxpayers to the tune of $2.7 million, falsely claiming to help 250 people find housing.
How many vulnerable people did you leave sitting in a snowbank so you could line your own pockets?
It's not the first time Mr. Adow did not want to answer our questions.
People say you're not doing work, that you're billing thousands of dollars for work that's not being done.
Come on, man. Let's stick to proper channels, man. I'm doing everything I am correctly.
KARE 11 Investigates first approached the BMW driving business owner last spring as we uncovered clients' claims of forged signatures and fraudulent billing.
I did not sign this legal document.
How would you describe that $14,000 that was billed to your Medicaid?
Fraud on every level.
Assad's brother, Anwar, was running another HSS company, also committing fraud, called Liberty Plus, out of the Adow family's Blaine home. When agents raided the property, they found stacks of cash, tens of thousands of dollars, hidden under a mattress and in a suitcase beneath the stairs.
How much money did you move overseas?
As part of his plea deal, Assad admitted he used the money he fraudulently billed to buy property in Kenya. Both brothers face 4 to 5 years in prison. Watch Housing Hustle on KARE11.com and streaming on KARE 11 Plus.
I'm from Minneapolis, and Somalians are just part of the culture here. As far back as I can remember, I've always seen Somalians. And in these past 5 years, the population increased so much. It went from seeing them to them feeling like the majority a lot of places that I go. And also over the past few years, I've noticed that I see a lot of them with new cars. So I'm a handyman, and I worked on a lot of Section 8 housing to make sure they're up to standard. And one thing I've noticed when I go see Section 8 houses, one, it's usually a Somali family. And what I mean, usually it's 9 times out of 10. And those houses usually have new cars in the front. I mean, cars with an S, multiple new cars. And what I mean usually is like 8 out of 10 Somali houses, I've seen that. And I always wondered how someone on Section 8 can afford multiple new cars. I just couldn't put it together. So now finding out about this fraud stuff makes so much sense. And you know who I feel bad for other than me for paying for that shit with my taxes? Is Somalians who came here on the up and up and who didn't break the law. Because as a Black man, I know how it feels to be judged because someone else with your same skin color did some stupid shit that you wouldn't approve of. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but one thing I do know is I've been saying for years, we need to kick Tim Walz out because he knew about this shit from the beginning.
I don't want him in our country, I'll be honest with you. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country is no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries too. I can say it about other countries too. We don't want them the hell. We have to rebuild our country. Somalians ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions, every year, billions of dollars, and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing.
So you're telling me in the last 3 days or 4 days since Thanksgiving, Tim Walz, a man that most people haven't thought of since the election cycle, a man that we called America's dad, has both been called the R word by Donald Trump and blamed for a massive deficit in his state? Honestly, after I saw this and after I even read the entire article, I'm stumped as to whether it's the fault of the government or it's just people finding a natural loophole. And I'm also stumped as to whether or not it's this Somali group at all. Here, let me show you. So it's really long, so just hang in there, okay? But I've highlighted the parts of the article that I thought were the most pertinent because, again, really long New York Times article, but it's a very intense fraud scandal that just came out in Minnesota. And it's about $1 billion missing because of COVID-19 payments during the pandemic. So over the last 5 years, law enforcement officials say fraud took root in pockets of Minnesota's Somali diaspora as scores of individuals made small fortunes by setting up companies that build state agencies for millions of dollars. Outrage has swelled among Minnesotans, and fraud has turned into a potential political issue. In a competitive campaign season, Governor Tim Walz and fellow Democrats are being asked to explain how so much money was stolen on their watch, providing Republicans who hope to take back the governor's office in 2026 with a powerful line of attack. So here's where my spidey senses were activated. Why is this coming out right now? Well, the Republicans are looking to take Governor Tim Walz's seat, and they're looking to attack Democrats. So is this why it's taking light now? And then it goes on to say, President Trump has weighed in, calling Minnesota a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity and saying that Somali perpetrators should be sent back to where they came from. Many of these Somali perpetrators, as you'll see in the article, are American citizens. So that would be hard to send them back to where they came from because where they came from is here. The prosecutors focused on a Minneapolis nonprofit organization called Feeding Our Future. So this organization, they claim that this organization set itself up and then invoiced saying that they fed thousands of children. But in reality, they said that most of the meals were non-existent and that the business owners spent the funds on luxury cars, and that this meals fraud was not an isolated incident. The next one really hit me. They said another program aimed to provide therapy for autistic children where they recruited children in their community, falsely certifying them as qualifying for autism treatment and paying their parents kickbacks for their cooperation. Asha Farha Hassan was charged with wire fraud, saying that she and her business partners stole $14 million. That's another thing. Why would they be copping to these crimes so quickly? Yes, they're white-collar crimes, and yes, you can probably prove them very, very easily, but aren't you innocent until proven guilty unless they're getting something out of it, right? So there are other people in here and they intend to plead guilty as well. And that they say out of the 86 people charged, all but 8 of them are Somali. That's kind of crazy, right? But then where Trump says they should go back where they came from, majority of them are American citizens by birth or naturalization. So they can't go back to where they came from because where they came from is America. Supposedly, a report by the Minnesota's nonpartisan Office of the Legislative Auditor about the lapses that enabled the meals fraud later found that the threat of litigation and negative press is why the state officials used their regulatory power to give them the money. So they were afraid that they were going to look like they were racist, and that it's because of the Democratic-led administration that they were reluctant to take more assertive action because they were afraid to look racist. And there's a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting demographic for Democrats. Okay, I can see that as a potential issue because Democrats care if they're perceived as racist. This is why it happened on their watch and not a Republican who wouldn't care if they were perceived as racist. This part I thought was like, whoa, this is a movie. As the trial in the meals fraud case was coming to a close last summer, an attempt to bribe a juror included an explicit insinuation about racism. Several defendants in the trial were found to have arranged to send a bag containing $120,000 to a juror, along with a note that read, why is it always people of color and immigrants prosecuted for the fault of other people? When Tim Walz was asked why his administration gave so much money out, he said that His administration may have erred on the side of generosity during the pandemic as the state pushed out large sums of money quickly, seeking to keep Minnesotans housed, fed, and healthy. I'm sorry, is that a bad thing? I mean, yes, people take advantage of the government. I think that that's just a given. And anywhere there's a loophole or where they see the government as, quote, weak, they're going to find ways to exploit it. Do I think it's the entire Somali community? No. Do I think they're being used as some kind of scapegoat for this larger COVID-19 pandemic sweep of fraud? Yes, I do. Is Minnesota an isolated state? Yes. Has this happened in every state? Yes. So I think, yeah, this is a lot of money and it is kind of coincidental and probably not a coincidence, but like it is kind of odd that it's happening all in one community, but it's not isolated to Minnesota and it's not isolated to the Somali community. You find any community, you find people that are going to commit fraud together, right? But of course, our president who hates immigrants is using this to temporarily lift legal status that allows several hundred Somali immigrants to live and work in the United States. And his comments followed a report in the Manhattan Institute's publication, City Journal, in which Ryan Thorpe, a reporter, and Christopher Rufo, a conservative activist, said that money from Minnesota's fraud was funded Al-Shabaab, which is a terrorist organization in Somalia, which is completely unfounded. This is going to be completely detrimental to the Somali community. And they've said they've seen more crime linked to them. They've seen more terrorism groups linked to them. And they've seen more things linked to their community as the years have gone on. And this is just going to add to their community's poverty, unemployment, and continued ostracization. What do you guys think? Is it Tim Walz's fault? I mean, yes, he was the governor, but do you think that you can find crime, maybe not this large, but you can find crime in any state? I don't know. These COVID-19 payments seem to have been riddled with fraud. So I think going to one state and highlighting that is just making everybody a little bit more crazy about immigrants and highlighting one immigrant group that now we can all have more hate towards, which in this country's temperament right now is not something that we necessarily need.
And they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country is no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I can say that about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell and they complain and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Is officially in panic mode, and you can see it in his eyes. Even the media and his own Department of Human Services have turned on him. Wait until you see what happens when NBC's Kristen Welker asks him to take responsibility for the fraud that's exploding under his leadership. He doesn't answer the question. He just starts speaking in word salad. Wonder where he got that from. And here's why he's sweating. Minnesota was just confirmed as the home of the largest COVID fraud scandal in the entire country. Over $1 billion in taxpayer money gone. That's not a program. That's a criminal enterprise with a letterhead. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett, she's out here calling for an entire group of Americans to be kicked out of the country. So yeah, it's another normal day at the circus. Hit like, hit subscribe, and don't forget to use the code Carrie15 at the Carrie Lane Show store for some great stocking stuffers we have available for you. The link and code are down below. Let's dive in. For 5 years, Minnesota's social safety net, it basically worked like an open air ATM. Fake nonprofits, fake meal counts, real luxury cars, real foreign real estate. Feeding Our Future claimed that it was feeding kids. Prosecutors say it was feeding bank accounts. Tens of thousands of meals were just typed into existence. And when the money disappeared, shockingly, so did the nonprofit. In 2022, poof, gone. And now Walz was asked point blank if he takes responsibility. Well, he says he's proud of putting people in jail. Translation, the house burned down, but hey, at least I found the matches.
Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money from government programs during COVID. As you know, Governor, that is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. So I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy.
Walz says it's lazy to connect the dots. That's funny because one of his own political donors just got caught with his hand in the cookie jar also. Jonathan Weinhagen, a former Minneapolis Chamber CEO, is now facing multiple federal fraud charges for allegedly embezzling over $200,000. Everything around this governor turns into a true crime podcast.
Now to what's being called devastating news. That's the reaction just in to crimes a former Minneapolis Chamber leader is accused of.
Jonathan Weinhagen is facing federal fraud charges tonight.
The indictment says from December 2019 through June 2024, former Minneapolis Regional Chamber.
Do you mean to tell me that billions, yes, billions with a B, were stolen from American taxpayers, funneled through fraudulent nonprofits, wired overseas, and then allegedly ended up in the hands of Al-Shabaab and the girly man, soy boy, Governor Minnesota, Tim Walz? He wants to talk about somebody's feelings. Don't nobody give a darn about your feelings, sir. Heck to the no. This foolishness has got to stop, and President Trump is shutting all of this all the way down. Let's get into this. Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome back to Unshakable with April Chapman, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. I am your host, April Chapman, and welcome to today's show. You guys, we have got to start dragging some of this foolishness into the daylight. There's this insane story. Actually, this is, in my opinion, one of the most insane, corrupt, reckless, and dangerous fraud scandals that this country has ever seen. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to deal with it biblically, factually, and with the full force of truth that these leftist custodians of chaos in the Democrat Party, they try so hard to suppress. So take a look at this clip.
Massive fraud scheme uncovered in Minnesota found money intended for social services has been allegedly siphoned indirectly into the pockets of the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Somali immigrants in Minnesota have reportedly been abusing systems meant to help the most unfortunate among us, including the latest federally funded autism services. The autism fraud scheme reportedly amassed $14 million through Medicare claims for services that were never provided, involving kids who never had autism. And the Somali immigrants behind this web of schemes have allegedly stolen billions from taxpayers, much of the money going back to the Somali government, where it would then end up in the hands of terrorists. Manhattan Institute investigative reporter Ryan Thorpe was one of the first exposing the schemes for their ties to terrorism. With us now, Ryan, a line from your story stuck out. The largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer, and you cite an unnamed source for that. What is the evidence that all of this money that was taken and the billions upon billions of increased funding in Minnesota for social services ended up in Somalia?
Well, billions of dollars of government welfare money is missing in the state of Minnesota.
How do we define missing?
Well, the fraud is so bad that the U.S. Attorney's Office has come out and indicated that they believe their entire government programs, where the fraudulent claims outstrip the legitimate ones. There are cases where indictments have come down or guilty pleas are already in to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars that were fraudulently, absolutely spiraling out of control over a short period of time. And the reality is that the Somali community, which is where these large-scale fraud rings have been concentrated within this population in the state, it is a sizable voting bloc. It is a voting bloc you have to win if you're going to win political office in Minneapolis. And so I think that was likely a incentive here that made some people not want to look too closely at what's been going on.
Okay, so let me paint the picture for you guys. Minnesota, which is run entirely by Democrats, they have allowed this sprawling, multi-layered, multinational fraud scheme operated by certain Somali nonprofits. Now, you guys may remember last week I did a video on the Islamic transformation of America and how the Democrat Party is open season for so much of this infiltration for these anti-American worldviews and how it enters in the country. I believe that the influx of Somali immigrants into the country is just part of a foreign national scheme. Now, as it relates to what happened in Minnesota, these weren't some little slip-ups. This wasn't like, oh, there was a clerical mistake. This wasn't some auntie who was overbilling for school lunches. No, that is not what happened. We're talking about fake autism clinics, fake elder care, fake disability services, feeding the future, all of these programs exploding from $3 million to $200 million in 2 years. These people went as far as to stage paperwork. They had make-believe non-existent clients and government benefits. All of this was just a veneer. It was all fake. None of these things ever existed. And where did the money go? The money went right back to the country of Somalia, straight into the pockets of people who are connected to or funding Al-Shabaab, which is an Islamic terrorist group. Let's repeat this slowly for the Democrats in the back, because you know they're hard of hearing. American welfare dollars, my money, your money, all of American taxpayer money went to Somali nonprofits, stolen, wired overseas, and funneled straight into terrorist organizations. And y'all, this mess happened on Governor Tim Walz's watch. But instead of taking responsibility, accepting some level of accountability, because you know accountability is like kryptonite to the leftists, this man pulls out the Democrat emergency escape kit. Well, you know, this is xenophobic, right? Like he starts crying racism. He starts talking about how Trump is just mean. And then he has the nerve to blame Republicans for not supervising his state. You cannot make this up. What in the gaslighting are we about to watch? Take a look at this clip.
I do want to start with the tragic shooting of the two National Guard.
In one of the largest taxpayer-funded fraud schemes in U.S. history, federal prosecutors say a Minnesota-based network stole more than $250 million meant to feed low-income children. Authorities have already charged 77 people, many of them Somali immigrants, in what's now known as the Feeding Our Future scandal. Minnesota, home to the nation's largest Somali community, has become the center of this massive investigation. According to the Department of Justice, defendants exploited a pandemic-era meal program by submitting fake invoices, inflated meal counts, and even staged photographs to make it appear they were serving millions of meals that never existed. In some cases, they claimed to feed more children than actually lived in entire neighborhoods. Instead of feeding kids, prosecutors say the money paid for luxury homes, high-end cars, jewelry, overseas transfers, and a web of shell companies used to hide the profits. A federal jury has now found Amy Bach, founder of Feeding Our Future, and Salim Ahmed Syed, guilty of conspiracy, bribery, wire fraud, and money laundering. And federal officials say more arrests may still be on the way.
Now, I want y'all to think about something. They gave all this money to Somalians, right? But if we say reparations is too divisive, reparations is too divisive. They can't give us money because it's too divisive. But when Somalians all applied for this money fraudulently, oh, we got to give it to them because we don't give it to them. It's racist. This place is a trip. This really truly is a Gentile world, y'all. It really is. You know, so if Gentiles commit fraud, they get the money. But if Israelites legitimately say, you know, you wrongfully enslaved my people and you never compensated us for the enslavement and all the wrong and everything you've done to us, that's too divisive and we can't give you any money for that. This place is effed up for real. So, y'all, I just wanted y'all to see how deep this thing was. And it just goes to show you damn near whole Somalian community was in on this fraud, y'all. It's no way it could have been billions of dollars like this if it was not full participation of the Somalian community involved in this whole thing. They were full participants. And don't let them try to tell you otherwise. They were full participants in this thing. The majority of them absolutely were. And you saw in this, they even bought businesses with the stolen money, had brand new homes built, bought spanking new cars, driving around with BMWs, all with the money they got through fraud. So these folks did not come here to work. And see, they talk a good game, all this work hard, but at the end of the day, they didn't come here to work. They came here to steal. They came here to scam and do whatever they could to get money and send the money back home to Somalia. And you can see just from what I showed you yesterday, they showing fixing Somalia up with the money. They don't even have outdoor lights at Mogadishu. Okay, they don't have no outdoor lights, so they sure ain't using the money to fix the place up. So it says it all. America, you suck. You'll give over $1 billion away in scams. This government will give billions of dollars away in scams, but won't give $1 for reparations, which are really owed. And this government was full participation, took full participation in the slavery of our people and won't pay, but they will pay for scams. Boy, I'm just loving how all this stuff is being exposed. So they'll take our taxpayer money and pour it into scams, but won't give one dime towards legitimate claims for reparations. That's all I wanted y'all to see, y'all. That's what I wanted you to see. Well, what Trump is saying is right, but Trump still won't give us our reparations. So, I can only go but I can only go but so far with Donald Trump. That's all I'm saying. Charjay, thank you so much for the 58-month membership. We love and appreciate Lisa Cabrera for creating hair products for us that work. Thank you so much for your support from my channel. I deeply appreciate it. And your support for my hair products as well. Yeah. Yeah, this place is a trip. So it just goes to show you America got tons of money. It got tons of money. and it will let you scam the hell out of the country. Now, C-19, that was like what? 2020? Okay, 2020. And this story is blowing up in 2025. And they're just starting to deport these Somalians in 2025 for scams they did back during C-19. But if we say reparations, oh, they're having meltdowns. They're having meltdowns, and oh, why you weren't a slave, and but yeah, well, these Somalians, they made up children they didn't even have. Okay, just so they could get money. You didn't complain about that. These Somalians made claims that they served food to children that they never even served. You didn't complain about that. But if we say reparations, you're filled with complaints. Unbelievable, America. You really truly do suck. You really do suck, America. You know what happened to us really did happen. These folks made stuff up and they got the money. And what happened to us really did happen. Racism really did happen to us. Redlining really did happen to us. Jim Crow really did happen to us. Chattel slavery really happened. We can't get one dime. These folks made up all kinds of mess to get money, and they got the money. You can't make it up, y'all. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. I deeply appreciate it. And I deeply appreciate all of the support you give my channel. And I thank you for it. And we'll come back together again tomorrow to do it all over again. Please enjoy the rest of your night. May the Most High walk with you always. Shalom, family.